Do you ever feel stuck? The alarm goes off and you think, is this really my life? Do you wish you could douse your relationships or your career or even your business with rocket fuel and throw a match on it? End the blah once and for all. They either launch or they burn up and you get to start over. I've been there and I see you. I'm Ben Walters, an entrepreneur, pastor, coach, and consultant. If you're ready to get unstuck and ignite your super pumped life or business, I'll give you the rocket fuel and the match. All you have to do is light it. Is it possible to get a Harvard degree at 57 when you barely graduated from high school? Did an accident, injury, or long COVID unexpectedly derail your life? Are you not able to do things that once came easy? Has this trauma sent your mental health spiraling? If any of this sounds familiar, you have to hear the story of David Adams. In this episode, David shares how an undiagnosed football brain injury nearly killed him, and how he decided to fight back and begin working at healing himself from the inside out. Welcome, David.
Thanks.
Yeah. So before we get into your later journey to Harvard, I wanted to rewind back to when you were a freshman in high school, to a time when you were playing football and ended up with an accident. Do you want to talk about that, David?
Yeah, and just to give it a little bit of context, I was, as a younger kid, I was always treated like I was the smartest kid in school, and really got used to kind of having the red carpet rolled out for me in class. And when I went out for football in ninth grade, I lasted one practice, and just, as luck would have it, took a really hard hit to the head that I was able to walk off the field, and really didn't give it a whole lot of thought other than, gee, I probably don't want to do that again. But the first thing that I noticed when I went back into the classroom was that I couldn't read the chalkboard from the front row anymore. And
Wow.
then it took me a little longer to put the evidence together and realize what was happening. But I also lost the ability to consistently understand spoken language. And
Wow.
so that kind of came and went. It's some pretty extreme, but what that is very strongly suggestive of is traumatic brain injury.
Sure.
And so high school went from being a total snap to being a complete nightmare. And
Wow.
and literally had my principal and my guidance counselor set my parents down and informed them that it would be impossible for me to graduate from high school. And
Really? And were you in on that meeting, or were you not
I was
privy
there.
to that?
I
Okay.
was there.
And what were you thinking were you 14 at the time?
Well, see, this rolled out. I was 17 at that when
Okay.
that happened.
Okay.
So this was a long.
Oh, so this was 3 years after the injury.
That's right.
Your parents and your principal sat down and basically said David isn't going to graduate because his academic work has been so subpar. Is that the gist of it?
That is
Wow.
the gist of it. Well, and this was interesting for going forward, and then to our conversation for right now. I was livid. I was completely furious, and I said to them, I'm going to figure this out. And
Wow.
and I did. I graduated with my class. Now it's still, I was still in the soup, and so
Okay.
so college was another nightmare after that, and I
Sure.
didn't make it very far, and so that got me in my early 20s. In my
Okay.
late 20s, my health had continued to not be great, and
Okay.
and so had lots of struggles associated with a variety of health problems.
Okay.
And then, as luck would have it, developed some kind of autoimmune problem, and wound up in a
Okay.
doctor's office being given a bunch of tests. And the doctor looked me right in the face and said, "This is going to happen to you soon. You're going to lose the ability to walk. You'll spend the rest of your life in a wheelchair. There's nothing anybody can do
Wow.
about it." And
Wow.
that I was 28 at that point,
Wow.
and spent 2 full decades really just kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop. And so it got really, really bad. During this whole time, I was married. My wife and I raised 4 kids, 4 very successful kids who, fortunately for both of us, I told them, you guys have to go make straight A's. You're just going to have to take care of things on your own. And they all just said, "Oh, okay, Dad, we will." And so that
Wow.
that side of my life went very well, while everything else, the wheels were falling off. And
Wow.
in the worst moment of my life, um, I got the light kind of came on, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to fix this thing or die trying. And
Wow.
started studying on my own neuroscience. And now I had heard about the Harvard Extension School years and years earlier. Got
Okay.
myself to the.
From your mother, right?
That's right.
Your
That's right.
mother, you said. Okay.
And so wound up when I was ready. Uh, Went to the Harvard Extension School to study neuroscience, and they
That's
gave
amazing.
when they let me in, they looked at my old academic record, and my advisor told me on 2 different occasions, he said, this you're doing this the absolute hardest way. This may not work very well for you. There are easier ways to graduate from Harvard. And
I don't know that there are any easy ways to graduate from Harvard. I think that
maybe it was
that
easier.
might be a
He said
misnomer.
easier,
Okay.
but
Okay.
um,
Degrees
the
of difficulty there.
the third time we spoke, he said, "You just like doing things the hard way, don't you?"
Huh.
And at that point, I definitely did. And the experience, the Harvard experience, was a godsend.
Wow.
I had made some pretty significant progress on a neuroscience protocol for
Okay.
for fixing brain damage with conscious thought, and
Okay.
that had progressed very nicely. I just didn't know how to talk about it, and so I
Sure.
had to go to Harvard and start taking these classes to learn the lingo, so to speak. And
Okay.
so
Yeah.
that I've made some good progress on that, and so that's as you and I met that night in Cincinnati.
Sure.
I had just completed my degree, my neuroscience degree.
Congratulations. That
Thank
is
you.
impressive. So I want to rewind back to kind of that period after the football injury where you're 14, you're sitting in the front row of class, you can't read the chalkboard, you're struggling to process the spoken language. What's going through your head at that moment? Are you scared? Are you angry? Are you confused? Just talk about what you were feeling in that moment as a kid.
Well, yeah, not only was it was kind of a whiplash experience from being the smartest kid in class, uh, having academia come rather effortlessly, to all of a sudden I was lost in the woods. Um,
Wow.
and I was a teenager. I was a young kid,
Right.
so
Right. So you're going through puberty and all that stuff. Yeah.
my ability to seek help was not great, just based on my
Uh-huh.
age, my and
Right.
inexperience. So I had no idea what I was dealing with. Frankly, my parents didn't either. Really, I looked an
Okay.
awful lot like just a problem child, somebody who and I had already, I was
So they
already.
thought it was behavioral to some degree, that all of a
They
sudden
thought
you're
they thought it
just
was
adolescent acting out.
they thought it was
Wow.
completely adolescent acting out. Yes.
Wow. Okay. So what are you feeling? They're kind of not being particularly empathetic. At that time, men don't ask for help.
Right.
That was pre-therapy and getting assistance. And then, but in your head, you're not where you were. So how are you just dealing with all that?
Pretty much, on balance, looking back on it, just let everything drop. It's
Okay.
I was it was a very unusual uh, state of despair.
Okay. That's what I was going to ask you, if you were deeply depressed, or
Oh yeah.
how was your social interactions, like with friends? If you were in kind of that high achieving nerd academic echelon and then you're struggling to keep up, does that change your friend group, and how does that work?
It did. The kids, the handful of kids that were close to me thought that I was a suicide risk, and I was.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And just
And no one to really help with that at that time. You just kind of had to muddle through it on your own.
just dumb luck that I didn't, get a hold of a pistol or something,
Wow.
really, and just put myself out of my misery.
Were there any folks that just were a source of strength during that time, or encouragement, or support, or love, or were you looking
There,
back
there
on
were
it?
there were people who cared for me
Uh
and
huh.
showed that they cared for me, and they were just they were grasping at straws, and so there wasn't a real connection, a real helpful connection made. It was a dark time.
Okay. And nobody connected it to the football injury at that
No,
time,
not
right?
not at all. No,
Wow.
this was the dark
So,
ages in terms of
yeah,
neuroscience. Nobody.
sure.
It was. I was 18 when they realized that my neck had been broken, that a vertebra in my neck was broken, but
Wow.
no one looked at my skull uh, for another 25 years at all.
Wow. So you just had to live with it. And so
That's
when
right.
you then, in that 3 years, you were kind of struggling in the wilderness, you then have this meeting with the administrators, your parents, and they're saying you're not going to graduate. And you decide, I'm determined to graduate. And you did.
Right.
But then, did you go to college, or did you
I
decide to go into a trade, or how did that next chapter? You made it to
I
graduation, you donned the diploma.
yeah. I got into an open enrollment local college in Georgia, and
Okay.
had a little bit of it was a very uneven pathway. So I had a little bit
Okay.
of success and a lot of failure, and just didn't
Okay.
make it very far.
Okay.
I did.
And so then you,
They accepted 2 years worth of credits for me to get into Harvard.
wow.
So
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 you didn't have even a college degree when you got into Harvard.
correct. That's right.
Wow. So your initial bachelor's was from Harvard.
That's right.
That
Go
is
figure.
impressive. And how old were you when you got that Harvard degree?
57. Yeah, it just happened.
Wow. That's impressive. So you had the moment at 14 that was kind of a critical moment. You had the moment at 17, and then 28 was when it kind of all started to come together about what was going on in a scary way, right? Where were you at 28? Like, they said you were going to be wheelchair bound and kind of on a downward trajectory. Had you had all four of your kids? You were married at that time, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Yes, and all four kids were alive, and depending on
So
me to provide for them. Yeah, it was an ugly
so
time.
tell well, yeah, tell me more about that, because I mean, just as another father, just thinking
Right.
of how do you process that with four kids, a wife, you're 28 years old, you seemingly have your whole life ahead of you, and then you're getting this dire news, but
I
yet everyone's counting on you.
Yeah, I took it like a death sentence. I really,
Okay.
yeah, it was uh, about about as bad as you might think. A really
Okay.
really terrible experience would be. It was pretty bad. I couldn't imagine anything worse. And
Okay.
there was I'm just might as well. I'm kind of spilling my guts here. Um,
Sure.
but it was 2 full decades. So from 28 to 48 uh, of really just kind of fumbling along and putting things together the best that I could. Again, very erratic. Had a couple of 6-figure income years mixed in
Okay.
with a bunch of barely 5-figure income years.
Wow.
And on the very, very worst day of my life, I finally decided I'm done. I'm wiped out. I can't take another step. I'm gonna I'm gonna kill myself. And
Really?
I walked into and this is weird, and I'm just gonna have to. I mean, it sounds weird, and it was weird, but such as it is. Walked into the kitchen, reached for a knife, and as I was
Yeah.
reaching for it, I didn't hear a voice and I didn't see anything, but I felt a presence, and very clearly the words, "You need to get a job carrying heavy furniture upstairs backwards," and I know, and learn how to feel the Spirit of God intensely all the time. And that was
Wow.
so far you can imagine. I mean,
Yeah.
I was resolute. I was going to die in that moment, and then I have these words reverberating in my head. I decided, well, okay, I'm gonna go do those things, and
Wow.
honestly, that moment got me through Harvard.
Wow. So you're on the verge of taking your own life with a knife, and you hear a voice telling you to start to basically work in a furniture moving business
That's
and get
right.
physical and continue on. Continue on.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Wow. That's powerful. And so whatever job you had, did you just go in the next day and say, I'm done here and go apply at moving companies? How do you tell your wife that moment with God?
Well,
Unpack
as
that for me a little bit.
yeah, I didn't know how to talk to anybody about that, so I didn't. Um,
Okay. And she
but
didn't know you were potentially suicidal at that point?
um, there were signs, but no, I didn't really share the details. If she was going to find my body and it
Oh,
would have been just a total disaster. You can imagine.
oh,
Um,
yes.
as luck would have it, I had a friend who owned a moving company, and so I
Okay.
called him and said, "This is going to sound weird, but I need to come to work for your company and carry heavy furniture upstairs backwards."
Wow.
And he said his first answer was, "Forget it, you too old." So all of his employees were 20-year-old college athletes and me.
Okay.
And so
Wow.
I persisted, and he said, "Okay, come on up here, give it a try." He said, it's the hardest thing you'll ever do, and
Wow.
if you can't do it, it's no big deal." And that's been
What was your fitness level at that point? Were you in good
not
shape?
great,
Were you out
not
of
great.
shape?
No,
Okay. So
I
you
was
weren't.
not. Yeah, um,
Wow.
and I'm banging around every day with kids who are seriously, Division 1, Division 2 college athletes,
Wow.
and just had to figure it out. I had no choice. I had to figure it out. So I figured it out. Um, and so now I joke, 'cause people ask me. I get the question a lot now. How old are you? How old are you?
Uh-huh.
Look at me with I'm pushing 2 20-year-old kids up the stairs. They have the other side of a piano, and
Holy cow.
they go, "Old man, how old are you?" And so I tell them, "Well, if I live till April, I'll be 58." And so
Wow.
now I've lived to April, so I'm a week away from my 58th birthday. But
And
yeah,
you're
so
running up and down stairs with heavy items with
that's it.
two college kids on the other end.
That's right. Um, and then and this the feeling the spirit of God thing, that got me directly into the neuroscience. We have so much
Okay.
running through our nervous system that we
Uh-huh.
don't understand. And
Right.
so researching that, digging into that, and trying to understand that better, uh, you can call that whatever you want to, and that's fine. You're not going to hurt my feelings at all.
Sure.
But um, trying to find fulfillment, trying to find energy, trying to find excitement and focus and belief, and all those things that you're talking about.
Right.
Um, that pursuit has been worth the world to me.
Wow. It's interesting you were mixing science and God because so many kind of see those today as mutually exclusive. And yet
Absolutely.
you seem to meld them.
Right, right. That and at Harvard, which the most of my classes have been at the medical school at
Okay.
Harvard, and you're talking about a hardcore bunch of atheists. it,
Right. You are right about that. You are
it has
right about that.
it has been an interesting experience.
Yeah. A lot of people call it godless Harvard. So,
Yeah, and they're not wrong
right.
generally.
Right.
Even though there is a divinity school, which I don't know how that works.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Wow. So you start studying neuroscience at Harvard. And well, but how long did it take you to actually get into Harvard Extension? Did you just apply and got in first time, or did you have to apply multiple times?
Well,
How did that
the
process work for you?
the way that Harvard Extension School really is an amazing thing, and so they have an alternate pathway. It's called Work Your Way In Admissions, and so they
Oh,
tell you tell them I want to take, this is my course of study that I want to take, and they say, well, here, take these classes uh, as an open enrollment student. You just sign up for them and pay for them, get
okay.
a discounted rate to take the
Okay.
classes. And if you
Okay.
make a B or better in all three of them, the three classes that they require, they admit you to the university and just give you carte blanche. You just take whatever you want to
Wow.
from there.
How
Uh,
hard were those classes?
well, that's a good question. Um, I would say that by the time that I was finishing up the third one and had listening to some of my classmates bellyache about all the work that we were doing, it occurred to me that if you can't do these classes, you're probably not going to go much for. You probably don't belong at Harvard, and so
Okay.
I'd say if the classes, the admissions courses, if they were fives, maybe five or six, uh,
Uh-huh.
in order to complete the degree that I took, I had to take some nines and tens.
Wow. So they were good boot camp then for what was coming, which was a lot harder, a lot heavier.
Yes, yes.
And you weren't diving into any, not to disparage the social sciences, but you weren't diving into any fluff classes. You were diving into hardcore science, neuroscience, Harvard Medical School type
Yeah.
stuff.
Uh,
Wow.
we were not messing around.
Okay. And what was your feeling like in you're getting ready to take your first course? Were you scared? Were you excited? I mean, because you hadn't even completed a general undergrad degree.
Right. Yes, scared and excited sums it up pretty well.
Okay.
And at the beginning, everybody talks about at Harvard, going through Harvard, the feeling like, gee, I don't belong here with all these smart people. Uh,
Right. Yeah.
went through that, and then got to the point that I felt like I had some professors that had some studying to do. Um,
Huh.
and so I mean, and I know that sounds pretty arrogant, and I guess that it is, but I attribute that to the uh, just rolling through the Harvard program. The idea is to make you grow. So they forced
Sure.
me to grow, and so that happened.
So looking at your own growth from 14 up till now, do you think you've healed your own brain through some of the techniques and some of the work you've done?
I do.
Okay. Say more about that. How does one heal their own brain non-surgically? Cuz you and I talked about this off air and I thought it was fascinating. Some of your
Yeah.
techniques how you do.
Well, and I think, just looking at it from a taking a step back and looking at it
Sure.
through a telescope, so to speak, the the human body is always trying to heal itself. It's
Okay.
always trying to fix things that are wrong. And we're learning. Take cancers for an example. We're
Uh-huh.
learning now that what we call a tumor, we see, oh no, I have a tumor. This is really bad. Let's poke the tumor and see what we can find. That really there's strong evidence to suggest that that's exactly the wrong thing to do, because the tumor itself is the body's healing mechanism taking place.
Huh.
It's
Okay.
isolating those cancer cells so that it can eliminate them. And
Oh, I
and
see. Rather than
um,
dispersing them, concentrating them.
right. And so we go in there and poke it, and then we wonder why the cancer spreads all over the body. And so
Right.
that's one part of it. Meanwhile, inside the brain, that's the central nervous system, is the brain and the spinal cord. The peripheral nervous system runs out to the edges of your fingers and your toes. And throughout all of that real estate, there are these neurons, these brain cells, these nerve
Uh-huh.
cells, that are always making connections and growing the connections and repairing damage to connections, and always trying to keep going, to the extent that we use them. You stop using them and they decay.
Okay.
They become less efficient, and they will die if we don't use them. So
Okay. So use
pushing,
it or lose it, basically.
pretty much, uh,
Okay.
pushing, trying, striving, uh, enduring are things that uh, feed our nervous system.
Okay.
And so you take a
So
nervous,
pushing ourselves is a good thing.
uh, absolutely, in
Okay.
every imaginable way, yes.
So what do you say to a society that a lot of times kind of recoils and pulls back when people say, well, that makes me uncomfortable. And so they sort of, that's a get out of jail free card to not do that. What do you say to those folks
Yeah,
who,
it's just exactly that's the way of death. It's exactly the wrong approach to take to life.
okay.
The- we should seek out pain painful
Okay.
things. We should seek out difficulties, and think about it. Think of, in your normal life cycle, you go
Uh
from
huh.
being, young and healthy, and all of a sudden you're middle aged and your back hurts a little bit, and so you slow down a little bit, and
Uh
then
huh.
then all of a sudden you're old and you can't
Right.
walk up the stairs anymore, so you don't. You
Right.
stay downstairs on the couch and
Right. Or you buy a
continue.
ranch.
Yeah, and then you're
Yeah.
right, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'm too old to walk upstairs anymore, so you
Right.
don't, and then you decay and you die. End of
Sure.
story.
Right.
The but so I think it stands to reason that human beings are built to fight that process, and we
Okay.
find that to the extent that we do fight that process, people used to be old and die in their 30s and 40s.
Right.
And there are many reasons why the average age is getting up in the 70s. See lots of 80-year-olds walking around. The fastest
Sure.
growing segment of society now is people over 100. And
Wow.
you you look at life insurance policies. Forever a
Yeah.
life insurance policy, they just they just canceled. They said, okay, you made it to 100, you win. Here's your money. They just can't. The policy's done. They just write the check as if you were dead. But they give it to you.
Wow.
Um,
Wow.
well, now you know what the new age is on that. It's
What is it?
121. 121.
Wow. They keep
So
raising the bar.
absolutely, absolutely, and
Wow.
that's I think that's evolution working for us. That's
Sure.
um, just uh, technology working for us, and so it's this is a very, very exciting time to be alive if we embrace it.
I agree with that. Talk about physicality. So you kind of had this calling to do furniture, but it spoke to a bigger issue of just trying to get yourself physically moving, physically pushing yourself. And you and I talked off air that not only do you move furniture, but you also work out morning and night. So say more about that, how holistically being more fit or physical helps your mental acumen and just kind of your overall well-being.
And I'm not really sure how to talk about that because it seems like it's viewed as a really foreign concept to a lot of our
Right.
society.
Sure.
If it hurts, don't do it. If it
Sure.
hurts a lot, slow down or stop, sit down and wait for the pain to pass. And
Right.
I think that um, as we if we sh- if we shift our view in science, in biological science, and look at look towards the optimal functioning of a body, we need to be pushing ourselves through pain on a
Uh-huh.
very regular basis.
Okay. I think you have a fascinating take on fasting. So just share with the listeners a little bit about your fasting regimen. Cause we were at a networking event and there was all kinds of great food and drink. And here you were fasting. So,
Right.
which was a segue to talk about kind of that aspect of your life and what that does neurologically.
Well,
Could you say
uh,
more?
sure. Of the things that I'm working on in terms of biological science, where the science, the great body of science, is not in agreement with my theories. Um,
Okay.
the one that's actually getting pretty close is on fasting, and so
Okay.
that's been a regular practice for me for about 10 years or so. Um,
Okay.
and what now all the scientists are agreeing upon is that when we go for an extended period of time, this is past 18 hours,
Okay.
um, your body looks at your digestive system and says, okay, you're empty.
Right. Right.
where is uh, where is my sustenance going to come from? And
Okay.
if it's truly empty and there's nothing there, and some time has passed where there's no there are no calories coming through your intestines into your bloodstream, your body naturally goes and looks for your weakest and sickest cells in your body, and it isolates the weakest and sickest cells and parts of cells, pulls those parts out and devours them, and
Wow.
uses them for energy. And
So those
then
are the fuel, which is a
yes,
win-win.
yeah, no, it
That's a
absolutely is. And
wow.
then think then at that point, so you have a hole, so say you have a cancer cell. It's about as sick as
Sure.
a cell can get, and your body says, all right, starving to death, what do we do? Here's one, let's eat that. And so it
Oh,
eats that, and then
okay.
there's a hole in whatever system that came from. It has to be regenerated, so your body goes in and regenerates a cell or a part of a cell in that particular area where the hole has been created. And
Okay.
so all of a sudden, you've got these baby cells. You've got these optimally
Wow.
functioning cells where you had sickness and
So
dysfunction.
that's a great interchange there.
Yeah, isn't that
That's
neat?
top notch. Yeah, that's really neat. So how long are these fasts that you go on? And how often do you do them?
I always tell people that my best days are the third day of a 3-day fast. Uh,
Okay.
and I'm
Wow.
doing that about every week to 10 days. And so
Okay. Wow.
I very routinely eat one meal in a day. So I'm doing about 18 hours each day. And
Okay.
and then just from time to time, I'll drop off another day and then take another day. And
Okay.
a funny thing that happens, especially if you're considering, because everybody's talking about it. I'll get all
Right.
these great results from intermittent fasting. If you're thinking
Right.
about it, baby step your way into it. Delay.
How do you do that?
Just pick a meal, pick a time, and delay it.
Okay.
If you always
Okay.
eat lunch at 12, like everybody does, eat it at 2.
Okay.
Then the next day go to 3. The next day go to
Okay.
4. And stretch. If it takes you weeks to get there, take the weeks and
Okay.
just baby step your way out to it. And then once you get to eating one meal a day, you do that for 2 weeks, and there's lots of science to back this up. Get to about
Okay.
2 weeks of one meal a day. Uh, that hunger mechanism, that, oh crap, I'm starving, I gotta eat something, like
Right.
right,
Yeah.
you get shaky.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
that sensation goes away. I
Oh,
can't
okay.
I can't remember the last time that I ate because I was hungry. I needed to have something to eat right
Uh-huh.
now. I just, stop in the nearest drive through and just send me, yes, biggie size it, give it to me, I'll take it, and just ram it down my throat. That sensation has been gone for a very long time.
Well, that's awesome. Wow. So, what advice would you give someone who either has a just unexpected accident, whether that's an athletic accident or whether that's a car accident, where all of a sudden the life they knew is just kind of gone and maybe they're processing that and how to move forward? What do you say to them? Because you seem to have had these points where you just get really bad news, and yet somehow there's something within you that helps you power through and continue to be an inspiration. So, what do you say to those folks today?
I think that it's in some form or fashion, in some way, you have to bring yourself back to center. You
Okay.
have to put your feet on the ground, stand up, and decide, I'm going to continue to move forward no matter what. And
Okay.
so you're marshaling resources that in the moment you may very well feel like, I've got nothing left, I have no resources. But the truth is, almost always we do. And you look at the life of a warrior. I'm watching this. I try to remember the name of the show on Netflix. These guys from in the Middle Ages, they're warriors, and
Uh-huh.
they're constantly going to war, constantly facing death. Really, in this modern age, we lose sight of the fact that really we could be killed at any moment in any number of ways.
Anytime.
Get on the
Right.
interstate, and this could be the end of your life, like right now. That could
Right.
happen at any time. And so in some way, we have to wrap our heads around this idea that I'm going to go, I'm going to continue to make forward progress until I just can't, until all
Okay.
the choice is taken away from me. And if you can muster your resources to any level, you still have a chance.
Right. That's true. So looking forward, what just kind of this is our question we ask all guests. What are you super pumped about looking forward in your life?
You know,
What are you excited about?
I want to be 120 years old and
Wow.
still running around. You know, still doing
Okay.
things. Um, the the experience, this academic experience, has been so enriching and so thrilling for me. Uh, what I'm doing right now, my plan is to spend the next 5 years writing a textbook, a neuroeconomics textbook, and going back to Harvard Extension School, and teaching a course in neuroeconomics. I want
Wow.
to build up the science from the ground and teach it to people who can go forward and teach it to more people, so that uh, just to maximize my footprint on the planet, so to speak.
Wow. Well, that sounds awesome. Well, congratulations on getting your Harvard degree. And I look forward to your textbook and to seeing you as a professor at Harvard in the future. And I just want to say
Terrific.
thanks for joining us. Thanks for sharing your story. It's really been a pleasure.
Thanks. This has been a lot of fun.
Thanks for joining me today on the Super Pumped podcast. If you enjoyed today's show as much as I did, I have 3 quick next steps for you. First, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube to make sure you don't miss future episodes. Next, leave me a review in your podcast app and tell your friends about the show so others can find and benefit from the Super Pumped community. And finally, to put the ideas from today's show into action, visit us at superpump.com to view the show notes, book a complimentary consultation, or take our free business launch readiness assessment. Keep well, and I'll see you next time.